Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, everyone. Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Guess what? I think I got the tech stuff figured out today. We'll see. But I think I got it figured out today. Again, I'm Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. For all of my work, obviously, you want to go to FG. Check it out right now. You can go to the site. We still have the flash sale going on before we even get to the rest of it. We got the flash sale going on. There it is on the screen. For those of you watching us live on YouTube at youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork. For those of you watching live on Facebook at facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ. In both those two spots, you can watch us live. You can ask questions. You can interact with each other. You can leave comments, and we'll address those throughout and at the end of the show. But for those of you watching live here, you can see the fact that we got the 2-for-1 deal. If you're not watching live, if you're catching us on your local podcast network when you type in Fantasy Sports Daily, or if you're at FantasyGuru.com, just clicking that Elite Plus tab on the top of the page, that's obviously fine too. Just consume the product. Hopefully you enjoy consuming the product. It is a free product. And if you want to get involved with what we're doing at FantasyGuru.com, you can always send a note to support@FantasyGuru.com. Support@FantasyGuru.com. Send them an email. Tell them what you need. Right now, though, we still have the flash sale going on. So if you want to take advantage of this, and I don't know why you wouldn't, it's available right now. You get a 2-for-1. You buy the DFS football, you get wagering football for free. You buy wagering football, you get DFS football for free. 2-for-1 right now. Elite Plus, you get everything when you get those two packages. You get the wagering in that one side. You get the DFS on the other side. Remember, you get access to Discord for both of those, depending upon which one you sign up for. You can get everything. You can get the all-in package, the all-in platinum VIP, and get everything we do for every sport. Support@FantasyGuru.com. But right now, 2-for-1 deal. Buy wagering, get DFS. Buy DFS, get wagering. 2-for-1 free. We'll throw the other one in. And remember, those packages include college too. So a pretty good deal over at FantasyGuru.com. All right, what are we talking about on the show today? And again, Fantasy Sports Daily is Monday through Friday, 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. I'm on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Justin Fensterman is on Wednesday, so he'll be on tomorrow. On Wednesdays, I'm on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio with Jeff Manns on the Elite Sports Show. That show is 3 to 6 Monday through Friday. So Jeff's on Monday through Friday. I'm with him on Wednesdays. Today, what we're doing, you can see it there on the screen. We're reviewing the Monday Night Football game between the Chiefs and the Saints. Chiefs moved to 5-0, heading into their bye week, 26-13 over the Saints. Saints got questions at the quarterback position now. Things kind of in disarray there. We'll talk about both of those games. We'll hit on some of the bye week scenarios just so you know real quickly what's going on. We'll talk some news and notes, quarterbacks, to talk about running backs, wide receivers, injuries here early in the week on a Tuesday. We'll discuss that. And in about a half an hour, as we do every Tuesday, we'll visit with Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com. We'll talk Waiver-Wire with him. And as you can see there on the screen, we got a bunch of names to talk about, and we'll do that in about a half an hour with Armando. All right, let's start out talking this game here. Monday Night Football, 26-13. The Chiefs win this football game. Kareem Hunt, and not going to do a victory lap off one game, not going to do I told you so off one game, but I am going to point out that the morning that Kareem Hunt was headed to the Chiefs to do a physical and everything, I said on this show, here's how you want to rank these running backs. Kareem Hunt, Sanjay Pirine, Carson Steele. That's how I said you wanted to have the running backs ranked. And I said it actually 3 hours before Jeff Mann said it on the Elite Sports Show. How has this played out? Well, last week Hunt took over the backfield. Last night, he really hammer-locked it. 27 carries, 102 yards, and a touchdown. He caught a 15-yard pass as well. Carson Steele, 5 carries for 12 yards. He's not part of this offense. He won't be part of this offense when CH, comes back from his issues, likely to be this week, or next week, because they're on a bye this week. Likely to be the next game. CH will return. And then it's Hunt, CH, and Pirine, and Carson Steele fades into oblivion. So feel really bad for those of you that spent significant portions of your budget on Steele. I personally saw a league where it was 97% of their budget. Bad. Hopefully you grabbed Hunt per our recommendation. Hunt has... Again, he's taken over the backfield for now, but this is still a situation that's in a little bit of a flux here, obviously. Because when CH gets back, he will have a role. Pirine was basically phased out last night, but a lot of that, I think, had to do with the game score. He still played 21 snaps, which was 5 more than Carson Steele. He ran 3 times as many routes as Carson Steele, so he's still going to be involved a little bit. But it's likely to be Hunt and Hunt and CH, I would think. It might be Hunt and Pirine. But the bottom line is right now it's Pirine as the lead of this situation. Can't expect him to have 28 touches a week. In fact, he probably won't have 28 touches again in his career, let alone this season. That was a huge number. But he got in the end zone. He was the force in the backfield. And now if he's on the waiver wire, and I know he's not, I was very surprised by Hunt and who we're going to talk about next, JuJu Smith-Schuster, how many questions that came into the Discord yesterday at fantasyguru.com with people saying, should we add these guys? And it's like the day that Kareem Hunt was visiting this team, before he even signed with the team, I said, go add Kareem Hunt. I said it right here on the show. We talked about JuJu Smith-Schuster when Ray Rice went down. Right here on the show. I mean, Rashee Rice, excuse me. Right here on the show. Like what took 2 weeks for you to add these players? And how are these players still on the waiver wire, which is even more confounding. But hopefully you made the move last night if you hadn't already made it previously. Because JuJu Smith-Schuster looked like Rashee Rice, if you look at the box score. Now, there was a tip pass, interception. He had 7 catches for 130 yards. That very well could be the high water mark for JuJu as well, just like Kareem Hunt in terms of touches. The 130 yards could be the high of the season for JuJu Smith-Schuster. But what did we see? We saw JuJu have the most targets. We saw him have the most catches. We saw him have the most yards at the wide receiver position. Looking at the way that the snap count broke down last night, Sky Moore played 6 snaps. He's not part of the offense. Cole Hardman played 8 snaps. He's not part of the offense. 56 snaps for Worthy, 56 for JuJu, and 59 for Justin Watson. Justin Watson led the team in snaps and didn't see a target. So it's JuJu and Xavier Worthy right now. Maybe with the bye week, they'll have time to jigger things around a little bit and maybe Hardman and or Moore get some packages that are developed for them. Maybe they make a signing. Something like that could occur over the bye. But obviously we saw last night JuJu Smith-Schuster leap to the forefront. And again, this is what we predicted at fantasyguru.com. That's why I hope all of you enjoy this show and are also members over at FG so that you can get this great advice. Because a lot of people, when this injury happened to Ray Rice, I didn't hear anyone other than us talking about JuJu Smith-Schuster. I certainly didn't hear people talking about Kareem Hunt before he was signed. Okay, we didn't hear that. You heard it here. And because of that, you had 2 huge performances last night. You probably won your matchups last night because of that big Monday night. And now you've got players in JuJu and Hunt who are usable moving forward. Again, not predicting 28 touches for Hunt ever again. Not predicting 7 for 130 every week for JuJu. No. As Jeff Mann said yesterday, I think he was on his league show. I think he was saying, let's get 12 to 13 a week in terms of PPR points. Now we got 20, which is great. Let's set our expectations in the 12 to 13 range. Bottom line is both those guys, because of injuries, Rashee Rice done for the season with the LCL, Pacheco out for a long period of time because of his leg injury. Both these guys are now the guys to own for the Chiefs. Now, Xavier Worthy, as I just mentioned, he was on the field the whole time. He played the same amount of snaps as JuJu, 3 less than Justin Watson. He actually ran the most routes of the 3 guys. He had 4 more routes run than Justin Watson, 6 more than JuJu Smith-Schuster. And he got 6 targets, which is good. But he only caught 3 balls for 25 yards. Now, they took repeated deep shots with him, which is nice. And this will probably be something that they do more of, I would assume, moving forward. Now that they've got JuJu and Kelce kind of for those underneath stuff, we'll start to see more of an emphasis, I hope, placed upon Worthy going deep. Worthy saved his fantasy night by getting the 3-yard touchdown run. And, while you got the production because he scored the touchdown, I mean, what'd you get? 12 points, 11 points. Like it's very light. And you can't, though this is the second touchdown he scored on the ground, you obviously can't count on that. So, let's be cautious with the Xavier Worthy scenario because, again, the rushing situation is kind of keeping him afloat in the fantasy. It's pretty surprising. There's big plays coming. We just haven't seen many of them from Xavier Worthy. Travis Kelce, 9 catches for 70 yards on 10 targets. Second week in a row, he's led the team in catches and targets. He's back to being a not only usable weekly fantasy play, he's back to being a starring fantasy weekly play at the tight end position. Even if it's just this, even if it's 15 points a week, that's stardom. That's stardom at the tight end position. And as bad as Kelce has been relative to expectations, as we sit here right now, it's still very reasonable to think that Travis Kelce ends up being the number 1 tight end in fantasy this year. Still very reasonable. And so whether he spent too much time in the offseason with his girlfriend or flying around the country filming commercials or whatever the hell he was doing, they have no choice but to heavily utilize him now. Does he wear out? Is it a scenario where we come playoff time? Because again, this team's 5-0. Come playoff time, he's burnt out. We'll see. But for now, he's back in our lives as an elite tight end option. And then finally, before we talk about the Saints, Patrick Mahomes, he had a pick that was it his fault? Didn't have a touchdown pass, threw for 331 yards. They went to 5-0. So, we can say what we want about Mahomes in the fantasy space, but he's led a team to a 5-0 record. Heading into a bye. Again, though, I think work on their offense a little bit with the extra time, try to figure things out with the injuries they've dealt with. I had a question this morning in Discord saying, look, I'm in a 10-team league. I'm thinking of dropping Patrick Mahomes and hoping he doesn't get picked up off the waiver wire. If you're in a 10-team league and you want to drop Patrick Mahomes because they're going into a bye week, I can't say it's crazy to do that. Would I do that? I would not do that. I would not drop Patrick Mahomes. But Ray, he hasn't scored. I know. I'm telling you, I wouldn't drop Patrick Mahomes. And if you drop Patrick Mahomes this week because he's on a bye, I would pick up Patrick Mahomes. And I'd carry 2 quarterbacks. I'd suck it up. Even though I don't like doing that, I would do it. So you have to determine if you're putting Patrick Mahomes on the waiver wire this week. You have to determine if you're okay with him not being on your team after the waiver wire runs this week because someone else is going to pick him up. Okay. I know so much has been made, and we've had this discussion, and I see a lot of people commenting, even on our own chat boards, about how Jeff Mans and I had this discussion about Mahomes last week on Wednesday on Sirius XM. And people said, you guys are confusing, I'm paraphrasing, you guys are confusing real-world quarterback play with fantasy quarterback play. I'll respond to that criticism, which I saw a couple of times. Jeff and I are not confusing the two. We've never confused the two. We'll never confuse the two. In fact, I have sat here on this show, on podcasts, on Sirius XM for 15 years and said over and over and over and over and over again, every single week, that there's a difference. I literally have said this probably every week for 15 years. There's a difference between playing good quarterback and scoring well in the fantasy space as a quarterback position. I say it every week. I talk all the time about the running quarterbacks and how they play like ass and how they throw for 170 yards. They have a pick. They complete 50% of their passes, but they ran for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. Woo! Say it all the time. So I'm never confusing the real world with the fantasy world, okay? I also think we need to be realistic about this scenario and say that Patrick Mahomes has disappointed based upon expectations, has fallen to the point where a lot of people aren't considering starting him, has fallen to the point where Geno Smiths and the Baker Mayfields of the world, some people like more. I'm not in that boat, real world or fantasy. I'm not in that boat. The fact is that Mahomes is down weapons, but the team is winning, and what they're doing is working. So there is that. Is he going for 330 and 3 every week? No, he's not doing that. I don't think there's a reasonable expectation that he can't go 250 and 2 every week. I still think we can do that. So I'm still in the Patrick Mahomes game. I think you should still be in the Patrick Mahomes game. We'll move on from that topic of discussion. On the other side of things, Derek Carr hurt his oblique on a chuck late in the game in the fourth quarter. Jake Haener came in. If they have to go to Haener, it's obviously problematic. Haener's just a guy, really. He's athletic, but he doesn't have a standout skill. His arm strength is moderate. His claim to fame is basically getting rid of the ball quickly, but he has no NFL experience. They would obviously hope the Saints, if Carr is out, to have Taysom Hill back. Then we're in a mess anyway, because then Taysom Hill probably plays quarterback more than we anticipate. In fact, he might be the quarterback. Who knows? So if Taysom Hill's on your waiver wire and he qualifies at tight end, which he shouldn't because he doesn't play tight end, okay? If he is, add him immediately. Immediately. Because if Derek Carr misses any time, you know that Taysom Hill at a minimum is going to see snaps under center, right? At a minimum. And he could be heavily involved in this offense. We'll wait to see with Derek Carr, they're running tests to try to determine if he's indeed going to miss some time with that oblique injury. Alvin Kamara, he didn't kill you in the fantasy space if you're in PPR because he had 6 catches for 40 yards. So that's 10 points there. He ran for 26 yards. He had 13 points. It was his worst game of the season by a good deal. He's still averaging more than a touchdown a game. He's still averaging more than 20 touches a game. Yesterday just wasn't good. And, it's not to be unexpected that Kamara would struggle because of the matchup with the Chiefs. The hope was obviously that the Saints would fall behind the Chiefs and the Saints would put the pedal to the metal and, Kamara would have one of these, 12 carries for 47 yards, but 9 catches for 82-yard games. Didn't happen. But he played the snaps. It didn't look to be limited physically, which was, I know, some of the worry coming in. He played 47 of the 53 snaps. So he basically was on the field the whole game last night, just didn't produce. I should be fine moving forward. Chris Olave, I mean, this is what happens when you play a good defense and you throw the ball 25 times. I mean, Derek Carr threw the ball 28 times before he left, about 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. The Saints have just not been a high-volume offense in terms of their passing. And as a result, though Chris Olave has gone for 80 yards in 3 or 4 games, he had 2 catches for 10 yards last night. It's only 4 targets. Again, tough matchup. I get it. But that's a woefully disappointing. You're still expecting 4 or 5 catches for 50 yards as a baseline. Still got to fire Chris Olave up, provided Carr is under center. If Carr is not under center and it's this Haener, Taysom Hill, we'll continue to monitor that over at fantasyguru.com, of course, all week. Rashid Shaheed, 9 targets to lead the way, 4 catches, 86 yards and a touchdown. And he's gone 3 catches for 70-plus yards in 4 or 5 games as Shaheed. The one time he didn't, though, it was 0. He didn't catch a pass. Oof. But he has seen, I think he's seen 19 or 20 targets the last 2 games. He's become a significant part of this offense. And while as Chris Olave is still the wide receiver 1, Shaheed has seen his route tree grow. He's not just running fly routes anymore, and he's getting volume. Again, averaging 10 targets the last 2 weeks. He's getting work. So Shaheed is really vaulting up. I know in Scott Fishbowl, a lot of people drafted him because of the return aspect of things, because return yards count there. But in the traditional fantasy space where return yards don't matter, Shaheed's in the mix to be a weekly starter. If you're starting 3 guys and you're in a 12-team league, especially with injuries, especially with bye weeks now, he has been impressive and better than we thought at fantasyguru.com. I know others were out there were very bullish on him, but certainly better than we thought at fantasyguru.com. So that's a rewind, replay, review of Monday Night Football. As you can see down on the screen, remember, bye weeks are still going on here. The Chiefs, who we talked about, they're on bye. The Dolphins are on bye. They desperately need it with the team being beat up. Minnesota's on a bye this week, and so are the Rams. And I not that all of you don't read a chart and know who's on bye, but I just wanted to bring this up because we're in that part of the season now where smart fantasy managers will try to take advantage of you if you're not being smart. Okay? Pay attention to bye weeks now when you start talking trades. You might think, well, this trade's a good one for me. I'm going to do it. But then realize that you're giving away a guy who's already had his bye week, and you're getting a guy who hasn't had his bye week. So you're -2 there. You're losing your guy, and you're losing the guy you're getting. So be very cautious when doing trades that you always check the bye weeks now. So this is more of just a PSA, right? But make sure you check that because a lot of people don't. And frequently the trades will come in and it's like, whoa, it's a 2-for-2 deal. You're getting 2 guys that haven't had their bye yet, and you're giving up 2 that have. Like, ooh, that's real. You can't be doing that. So keep a close eye on that. It's not just about, scrambling this week in week 6 to fill, for your loss of Kareem Hunt or Patrick Mahomes. It's about making sure that you're not being taken advantage of on the marketplace when a trade offer comes in. Pay attention to those bye weeks. Okay, some of the news and notes. This story broke this morning, and we kind of got a chuckle in our little Discord or little IM, our Google IM chat that we have with the folks at FG and Sirius. Ted Schuster's like, isn't this hilarious that Aaron Rodgers got Robert Saleh fired? And I don't know if he did, but this is right on schedule. For those that missed it, Saleh was fired by the Jets. Jeff Mans has been critical about the way the team has been run and everything. Okay. He really did a good job. By the way, if you missed the show on Monday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, Elite Sports on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. I know everyone doesn't subscribe, but if you do, you can always catch the shows on demand. And he spent, 5 to 7 minutes talking about the Jets offense and particularly their passing game. And I really would encourage people to listen to that because Jeff broke it down X's and O's. It wasn't just, Aaron Rodgers sucks. Or he described what Aaron Rodgers is trying to do, what they're doing with the offense, what they're not doing with the offense, what the issues and problems are. He spent 5, and it wasn't Jeff saying Aaron Rodgers sucks like he has at times. It was him actually breaking down the X's and O's. And I think it's really worthwhile. If you missed it, catch it on demand. But the bottom line is, you look at the Jets, they're underperforming. The defense has been good. Their offense hasn't. Now, Nathaniel Hackett, as Jeff has said many times, is probably the worst offensive coordinator in football history. This is not really on the defense. Saleh's a defensive guy, or at least he was, right? Not really on the defense. Defense continued to play well. Let's not forget that Saleh last year had Aaron Rodgers get hurt in week 1. When he came to the team, he was forced to play Zach Wilson. Okay. So he hasn't had exactly the best run of it. But he's out now. We'll see if it changes the Jets' outlook. I don't think it does because, it's Aaron Rodgers is running the offense anyway, so I don't think that firing the head coach matters much there. Deshaun Watson, who we talked about yesterday on the show, and you can always catch our shows on demand, right? They're always stored over at FG. If you go to the Elite Plus page at the top, find this show. You can always find us on YouTube and Facebook and all that. We talked about Deshaun Watson, and we posited whether or not Watson would be better off on the bench for this team with Jameis Winston starting. Team has said no. If they came out and affirmatively said Deshaun Watson's our starter, so we just have to continue to deal with it. In terms of starting quarterbacks, the head coach of the Colts, Shane Steichen, said that Anthony Richardson's our quarterback when he's healthy, period. And we also talked about this on the show yesterday. If the Colts are trying to win games right now, Joe Flacco's the better option. How much of it we're trying to win versus the future, right? And even if they're trying to win now, they go 9-8 and squeak into the playoffs. Like, they're not winning the Super Bowl, right? So they need to develop the quarterback. They're going to do that. We don't know at this point of the week whether Richardson plays the next game or not for the Colts. I think they're trending toward yes. And the bottom line is when he's healthy, he will be the quarterback for the Colts. And I get it. You got to figure this out. And, once you've committed to him, and I've heard both arguments too. Once you've committed to a player at this stage of their career, and they committed to him last year until he got hurt, right? Once you're committed to a player you're in, we're going to start you, then we're going to pull you, then we're going to put you back in week 11 kind of thing. That's really tough. If you're going to make that choice, they should have just started Joe Flacco in week 1 if that's what they wanted. If they didn't think Richardson was ready, start Flacco for week 1, play him for a while, then get Richardson in there when you feel better. They made the decision. They're in with Richardson. He's going to be their franchise play for better or worse. He's got tremendous skills that he needs to massage and convert into success at the NFL level. We'll see if he can do that, because one of the things he has really struggled with is he cannot complete passes underneath. He can't do it. His targeting is off. He's on a different page with the receiver. Anything that's not chucking it, it's just not working. And until that part of the offense matures, Richardson's going to be a very tough start. And remember, too, this is a negative for Josh Downs, who all of a sudden has flamed on, right? Because of we'll talk about him later with Armando Marsaul. It's a negative because of Flacco being down doesn't help Downs. It's a negative despite 5 catches for Pittman last week. He did get in the end zone. It's a negative for Pittman having Richardson in there. So there are ramifications for that moving forward. The Jaguars, and this is interesting because we talked about this yesterday, the backfield situation with the Jaguars, and we tried to figure out like Bigsby took over the backfield. If you look at the box score, even though as we discussed on the show yesterday, he didn't take over the backfield. Doug Peterson, head coach of the Jaguars, said that the shoulder is an issue for Etienne, and it wasn't Tank Bigsby taking over the backfield. The reason we saw a lot of Bigsby late in the game in week 5 was because Etienne's shoulder just wasn't right. Now they assume they say that Etienne's going to be okay, that he's not headed to the injured list, that he's not in danger of missing the next game. But it is something to keep in mind. Obviously, I have a shoulder issue right now I'm dealing with. If you have a shoulder issue, I'm okay to type on a keyboard. Playing football is a little different. But the bottom line is, at this point in time, Etienne is fully expected to play in the next game for the Jaguars. As we talked about yesterday, 50-50 split, 60-40 split. If Etienne is healthy, he's still the lead guy in this backfield. Be cautious with Bigsby. We'll talk about Bigsby with Armando Marsaul. We'll get his take. But as I said yesterday, I'll repeat it today. Be very cautious bidding what you need to bid to get a guy that just ran for 2 touchdowns in Bigsby, because he's not taking over the backfield, pending the shoulder injury being worse than we're told with Travis Etienne. Next up, Joe Mixon. And, we've heard this minor high ankle sprain thing with Jonathan Taylor. Who was the other one? Was it Christian Watson? We've heard this, right? And it's like they're trying to soft play the fact that there's an injury that he's dealing with. Well, DeMeco Ryans of the Texans came out and said, still not sure if the ankle issue with Joe Mixon is going to be okay and if he's going to play this week. So they're still saying kind of week to week. Oof. That's what happens when you have an ankle sprain. So this idea that, Jonathan Taylor was going to play last week was nonsense. Like, it's just not, again, you and I walking down the street with a sprained ankle, okay, it hurts. We can deal with it playing football. So right now we still don't know if Joe Mixon's going to play. And, Akers and Ogunbowale split the backfield with Ogunbowale actually getting 20 touches. So Ogunbowale is now, better or worse, he's ahead of Akers because he's the passing down back and he's getting more carries too. There's a chance that Dameon Pierce is going to be able to return from his hamstring injury. So they might have those 3 guys this week with no Joe Mixon. We'll continue to monitor this, but Joe Mixon, we are not at all certain he's going to play this week. And that's, we were hoping he's playing in week 4 based upon the reports. Then we thought pretty sure he was going to play in week 5. Now we're into week 6. And we still don't know if Joe Mixon's going to play. It's getting a little rough there with Joe Mixon. Next up is a situation with A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. Both of them are expected to return this week. Brown coming back from a multi-week absence from the hamstring. DeVonta Smith coming back from the head injury. Obviously, they had the time away in week 5 for the bye to heal up. The Eagles' offense has been very disjointed to date. They've had Dallas Goedert forced into a larger role than he will fill with Smith and Brown back. If Brown and Smith are back out there, you fire them both back up this week. This is not a scenario where we're saying, well, let's see how they do in week 1. No, if Brown and Smith are active, they're in your lineups in the fantasy space. Brown, obviously one of the best receivers in football. And DeVonta Smith catches 7 passes for 70 yards every game. I mean, you got to have these guys fired up and in your lineup if they're indeed available this week. And it seems like they will be at this point. Nico Collins, going back to the Texans. Nico Collins, he's being called week to week with his hamstring injury. Seems pretty likely he does not play the next game for the Texans. That being the case, Stephon Diggs is very likely to see close to double-digit, if not double-digit targets. And Tank Dell, who was overdrafted, who we've talked about on the show, was blatantly overdrafted, now gets a chance for those people that overdrafted him to shine. Because if Nico Collins is out, what do the team be lacking? They'll be lacking the deep threat. What does C.J. Stroud like to do? He likes to throw the ball deep. Tank Dell, I think Jeff said on the show yesterday on Sirius, he might have said Tank Dell to the moon or something like that. But Tank Dell is going to be somebody, we'll have all the rankings at fantasyguru.com and all that. Tank Dell will be somebody that people will be very pleased, I think, to start this week if indeed Collins misses the game as we expect. A couple more notes before we visit with Armando Marsal. Zay Jones is eligible to return from the suspension list this week. We're kind of assuming that will happen. We'll get some confirmation of that this week. What's his role early on? Not a starter-worthy role in the fantasy space for sure. They've got Michael Wilson has really established himself as the 2 next to Harrison. And then it's, the Greg Dortches of the world and things like that. So Zay Jones can carve out a role here, but this is not an offense with the Cardinals that throws it 35-plus times a week. They're not an offense that's throwing it for 280 yards a week. So Zay Jones, for now at least, in my opinion, unless you're in a really deep league, should be left on the waiver wire. And then finally, circling back to the Jaguars as well, Evan Engram, who's possibly been in a lineup the last couple of weeks and hasn't, because he hasn't been able to get back out there because of his hamstring injury. He's got a pretty good chance of playing this week. So it looks like Evan Engram will return to lineups this week. If that's the case, Brenton Strange is out. You can drop him. Evan Engram, who shockingly is still on waiver wires in some leagues, which I don't understand. This guy, caught 100 passes last year, folks. He's had almost 200 receptions the last 2 years. Almost 200 on the waiver wire. With the state of the tight end position, you're meaning to tell me a guy in Engram who's going to catch 4 or 5 passes for 50 yards every week is not worth being on your roster? He's absolutely worth being on your roster, and it sounds like he's got the opportunity to start playing this week for the Jaguars, which is something we desperately needed and wanted to see. So there we go. So that's our review there of kind of how things are in the state of football. So now we got a chance to talk some waiver wire. We brought in our man, or we're going to bring in our man, who we have in here every Tuesday on the show. You can find his podcast, Mind of Marsal, over at fantasyguru.com. Click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. You can find this show as well as Armando's show, Mind of Marsal. And that is Armando Marsal of fantasyguru.com. Armando, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing well, Ray. And yourself?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, I got a new computer.
So, nice.
Yeah, so yesterday was I battled a little bit the tech, to make sure we locked in, but we're good today. So, yeah, I don't know. Do you use like OneDrive or the cloud for your storage, or do you just store everything on your computer?
No, I store everything on my computer, and then I have a backup hard drive that I use. And then once it starts getting like a lot, I move, the older stuff into that, backup and yeah, it's a process. It's a process.
That's the same thing I do, but I tried to make sure, because I'm transferring everything over. I tried the OneDrive with the Microsoft, the cloud, and I couldn't find yesterday. So I realized that it's not where, and I'm trying to find it, but it's all in a different spot because now it's on the cloud instead of on my computer. And so we got it set today. I'm still trying to decide if I want to keep the cloud going or just, because I'm like you, I've got the computer with a portable hard drive as a backup, but we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, a little more old school, I still got an AOL email. All right, I still got an AOL email. So change is not something I embrace all that much.
I gave an AOL email to we're having tree cutters come out to trim the trees, and the lady's like, AOL, AOL. That's like my personal one that I never use. But anyway, we didn't bring you on to talk tech, though it sounds like you and I are in the same area with tech. We just if it works, who cares? We're not changing it. Let's talk a little bit about the waiver wire. And we broke down the Monday Night Football game, and I had the discussion because obviously the Chiefs are headed to the bye week this week. And I've already gotten questions in Discord. You may have too about Patrick Mahomes. Are we holding Patrick Mahomes through the bye? I mean, to me, I said yes. If you're in a 10-team league and you got Jaden Daniels and you want to let it rock, what are we doing with Patrick Mahomes through the bye?
So it's funny because I had this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, right? Because he's frustrated with Mahomes and whatnot. I understand, right? I think when you drafted Mahomes, you drafted this for the seeding. You weren't drafting for a serviceable quarterback, which is what he's really been. That's what he's been. He's been a serviceable quarterback, just not hitting his upside, not hitting that seeding, not hitting those expectations, right? But when you look at the waivers, so I pulled some numbers. Sam Darnold's having a great year, 16, 19, 23, 20, but 4.3 fantasy points last week. Andy Dalton, great start, 27, 17, 5.1 fantasy points this week. Kirk Cousins, off to a rocky start, coming off a great game, but he's also had 2 games of sub 10 fantasy points. You're not getting that with Mahomes. You're not going to get sub 10 fantasy points many times, if at all, this season, right? So even on a bad day yesterday, he threw over 300 passing yards. He had, obviously the interception. They scored with rushing touchdowns there. So again, it's one of those situations where if you drop Mahomes and then he has a big game, you're going to go out there and you're going to bid a ton of fab to get him right back on your roster if he's even there, because I think if you cut him in any league, I think he's going to be picked up. So for me, I am holding him. I'm keeping him. I totally understand the frustration, but you have to understand he's still giving you a pretty serviceable, floor on a week-to-week basis. I think he's QB 15, 16 on the season. That's not what you drafted him for, but it could be far worse. And I think you're going to get more variance with some of these guys on waivers.
A guy that could be on waivers. It's been a long time since he threw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. But Kirk Cousins could be on the waiver wire, right? Depending on how your leagues are set up. I know there's some crazy leagues that allow you to pick up players that have already played and all that nonsense. But if Kirk Cousins on the waiver wire, how much do we buy into what we saw last week? Because as you noted, prior to last week, I mean, he was just struggling. He was just a dude. He was worse. I mean, way worse than Patrick Mahomes. Are we buying Cousins because the price is going to be high? And if we do, are we comfortable saying he's that 260-yard, 2-touchdown guy we've grown to love?
So I wouldn't overspend on Cousins unless you're absolutely in need of a quarterback. If you have someone like Mahomes or if you have, a serviceable quarterback, no, I wouldn't overbid on Kirk Cousins. Now, I will say I do think that I'm not expecting obviously 500+ yards every single week from him, but I do think that you, like you said, 250+ yards, a couple of touchdowns here on a week-to-week basis is very feasible for him. Remember, we have to remember this was a new offense. He's playing with a lot of younger guys. The timing, it was going to take time, and you're kind of seeing it little by little. It's working out. It's playing out. It's looking better. He came after last week's game, and he said he felt comfortable, really comfortable this past week. Obviously, he's going to say that after such a great game. But now he has another good matchup, right, against Carolina. I think they could run against Carolina, but this is also a vulnerable pass defense. So I think he's a very strong streaming option this week, and I do think he's going to give you more consistency that he did early on in the season. As the season progresses, I do think that floor is going to be much safer for Kirk Cousins here.
Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com. We're in a scenario where you and I have had this discussion a lot here on the show, rolling through backup running backs, right? And this week it's this guy, this week it's this guy, this week it's that guy. It's week 6, you've had 14 running backs on your team. Well, now the guy that, if he wasn't added last week, now one of the guys everyone's chasing is Tyrone Tracy, who went out and had a great game, ran for over 100 yards for the Giants. The problem is that Tracy didn't take over the backfield. If Singletary's healthy, there's no reason to think Singletary doesn't go back to leading the backfield in touches. Now, maybe he's not healthy for the Giants next game, but how aggressive are you with Tyrone Tracy? Because he's a youngster. People get excited about youngsters, and he just ran for 100 yards.
It totally depends on your roster context, right? If you really need a running back, I like the idea of getting a little bit more aggressive on Tracy. I think that even when Singletary comes back, I think Tracy will carve out some role. Remember, he's one of those, running backs that played receiver in college. So he's that dual threat running back that could be serviceable in PPR formats. I think after last week's performance, he can earn some more playing time. I still like you said, I still agree with you. I think this is Singletary's backfield when healthy. I think Singletary will get the majority of the opportunities, but now we know what kind of handcuff you have in Tracy, right? So like if you don't need, if you're just looking for a handcuff, I think you don't have to be as aggressive. If you're looking for production right now, maybe a little bit more aggressive, but once Singletary's back, I don't expect those kind of opportunities for Tracy. I do think a little bit of a role, but not a crazy amount like we saw. He had 20 opportunities this past week. That's not going to happen when Singletary's healthy.
Yesterday on the show, I talked about the Jaguars' backfield. I spent a couple of minutes again today talking about the backfield. Tank Bigsby obviously is on the waiver wire in a lot of leagues. He had a big weekend. We shared the information that it sounded like Etienne's shoulder was barking a little bit, which was one of the reasons that Bigsby was so heavily involved the other day. Bigsby's looked good. There's no doubting that he's looked good. But Etienne's got the contract. Etienne's got the pedigree. Etienne's not going away. He still caught like 6 passes over the weekend. It's not like he didn't play. You're going to have to pay to get Bigsby. Do you pay that price, Armando?
Why is he still on waivers? Like, why is he still on waivers? We've been saying Bigsby since before the start of the season. Handcuff. Look, I'm not expecting Bigsby to be the featured back in this backfield. I think right now the Jaguars are in a comfortable position where Etienne is dinged up. He's dealing with the shoulder injury. And they have someone like Bigsby that they can lean on and they can count on and not really put all of the workload on Etienne. I think once Etienne is fully 100% or as close to 100% as possible, I think he's going to assume the majority of the workload. I think Bigsby will still get his 7 to 10 opportunities per game. You mentioned it. So 13 attempts for Bigsby, 13 opportunities for Etienne this past weekend. A 50-50 workload, 23 snaps for Bigsby, 22 snaps for Etienne. The week before, Bigsby outperformed Etienne, but Etienne played more snaps. So it's just they're sharing the workload. One is looking a little bit better than the other. If Etienne would have had the big game like Bigsby, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation, and you wouldn't be overbidding for Bigsby. So just keep that in mind. It's all perspective and relative to your team needs, but I wouldn't overbid chasing that production. I don't think that production is going to be here each and every week for Bigsby.
Armando Marsal of FantasyGuru.com. Armando, another running back in your state there. Jaylen Wright. Everyone likes Jaylen Wright, but the issue we've had with Jaylen Wright is he the 4th running back on the Dolphins? Is he the 3rd running back on the Dolphins? Now you've got issues with the offense, with it not operating. Etienne, though, hurt again. This time it's a head injury. Mostert looked pretty solid last week, but we know with Mostert, he's got a track record of injury. Is Wright maybe the best add between Tracy and Bigsby this week, or is that taking it too far? Because there is a scenario where Wright can have substantial playing time right now, as well as potentially moving forward.
So I've been saying to hold Wright all season long. Obviously in shallow bench leagues, it's very difficult to hold someone like Wright. But he's someone that I thought stashing makes a lot of sense. He's a rookie. It was going to take time for him to kind of learn the ropes here in the NFL. That the backfield was healthy. They had Wilson, early on as well as an option to lean on, a veteran back that knows the system. And we're seeing now, like Wright looked like the best running back in this past weekend. He outrushed Mostert, in fewer attempts. He showed that explosiveness that we like from him. He's someone that's built like a 3-down back. Really, he could do a little bit of everything. So I view him as a super strong stash. I'm not counting on him as someone I want to rely on right now. Obviously, the Dolphins have a bye coming up here, and then we're expecting Tua back in week 8. Those are reports potentially against that Arizona game. So this offense could be much better in a couple of weeks than what we're seeing right now. And like you mentioned, Etienne, already the 2nd time he's been injured this season. Mostert's not someone that has a great track record of staying healthy. And you have a young man that continues to learn the playbook, continues to get more opportunities when there's injuries. So I think down the stretch, he's someone that could be a difference maker. You're wasting a bench spot right now, and someone that's pretty much going to collect dust for you. But at some point, I think he could really be a strong plug and play if indeed, this backfield suffers more injuries, like we've kind of already seen to start the season. So obviously, in leagues with 5 bench spots, you can't do that. But where you have 7, 8 bench spots, I like the idea of stashing someone like Wright.
At the wide receiver position, one of the bigger names on a lot of waiver wires because of his performance last week is going to be Jalen Tolbert of the Cowboys. The knee is gone completely with Brandon Cooks, so he's on the injured list. So Tolbert, who was already ascending, is now basically taken over as the number 2 receiver, it looks like, with the Cowboys. Had the big game on the weekend. He's a Cowboy. He's coming off a big game on national TV. There's going to be bidding. How aggressive do we get with our bidding if we have a need at the wide receiver spot?
I think you could be very aggressive here with Tolbert. You mentioned Brandon Cooks on IR. He's dealing with an infection in that knee. My aunt had a knee operation. She dealt with an infection, and it lasted for 2 months. So just keep that in mind. He had a 24% target share, 89.5% of the offensive snaps, ran 40 receiving routes, second most on the team behind only Lamb. Someone that I think is going to continue to carve out a pretty solidified role here on the team that at the end of the day, I know Dado, okay, but they don't have a really great run game. Let's be honest. This is a pass-heavy team here, and then they're going to play a pass funnel defense here in week 6 against Detroit. So Tolbert, you look at some of the teams on bye. There's some notable names, wide receivers. You could be a serviceable wide receiver 3/flex option this week. I'm viewing him as a very low end wide receiver 3, high end wide receiver 4. So depending on your team needs this week, he's someone that could very much be in play against the Detroit Lions.
Armando, what about Jordan Whittington? He is somebody that Jeff Mans has been very pro Whittington. Whittington had the big game this weekend, and they're on bye. The expectation is that Cooper Kupp is back when they return from the bye. Maybe a couple weeks behind that, Puka Nacua. Now, can Kupp and Puka make it back on those timelines and stay on the field? We don't know the answer to that. So Whittington is a tricky player to add because, again, he's got a real big role in the offense now. Those two guys are lurking, and there's a bye. So are we adding Whittington? I mean, there's roadblocks here, but there's also a path, kind of like Jalen Wright. There's also a path to Jordan Whittington being a starter for your team in week 10.
Yeah, it really depends on your roster and your bench, right? Like if you don't need the service this week, if you don't need his production this week, yeah, go ahead and go out there and bid. I wouldn't be over aggressive though because of what you said. They're going to be on bye, and I think that if he's not added this week or in some of your leagues and he kind of goes overlooked, you could get him a little bit cheaper. But the problem is you're going to have to pay premium, right? In most of these leagues, you're going to have to pay a premium price, and you're going to pay a premium price for someone with a lot of unknowns. Whereas someone like Jalen Wright, you don't have to pay a premium price. So I'm less inclined to go out there and overbid on Whittington with the information we have at hand this week. And if he, for whatever reason, someone adds them and then they need someone, they drop them. We see this happen a lot. You add someone, they drop them. At that point, maybe go get them at a cheaper price. But I would bid a small amount, though, right? I think that's the right approach. They don't unbid. They don't go without bidding on him, but don't overbid. I think that would be the way to go about it.
What about Josh Downs? He's got a more solid role in his offense. There's less in his way. Is he a preferred option for you over Whittington if you're bidding on waivers this week? Because I think the common wisdom that has played itself out is that when Richardson's under center, it's more difficult for Downs. We saw Flacco come under center, and all of a sudden here goes Downs, like we saw last year when Richardson was out too with Gardner Minshew. Where are we at with Josh Downs?
It's always going to be contingent on the quarterback situation there. And that's if you're bidding on Downs and if you're trying to add them off waivers, you just have to keep that in mind, right? Like the time when Richardson steps under center, that floor is going to be so much lower on Downs than it is with Flacco under center. And there's no arguing or disputing that because you're seeing it firsthand, and Richardson has just looked really bad as a passer so far this season. Not that he can't correct that, but you just have to understand there's going to be a lot of volatility when it comes down. He's not going to be as safe of a plug and play as he is with Flacco under center. So it depends on your roster context. It depends on your receiving group. And if you want that kind of volatility from a receiver, that's, I feel like Tolbert will give you a much safer floor, and someone like Wan'Dale Robinson is going to give you a safer floor, not as much upside. Obviously, he's going to give you 6 catches for 35 yards, your 9.5 PPR points with Wan'Dale Robinson, right? But you're going to get those 9.5 PPR points, whereas Downs could be a 2 or a 1 point game.
What about Darnell Mooney? Because again, when your quarterback throws for 500 yards, everyone has big days. Mooney had the best game of the season, 9 catches, 105 yards, a couple of touchdowns. He has been a significant part of this offense. I think Ray McLeod's involved, but I think Mooney is the second receiving option here. You and I talked about Cousins a few minutes ago. Cousins obviously has had a track record of supporting multiple receivers on a weekly basis. Mooney, for some people, was drafted, and they're saying they're the smartest person in the room because they drafted him in the 14th round and they're getting production. Other people drafted him and dropped him. He's on the waiver wire in some leagues. Everyone's bidding after the huge game. What are your thoughts with Mooney in terms of what you'd be bidding this week and what your expectations are in the second half of the season?
So he's played in 97% of the offensive snaps. He accounts for 24% target share, 40 targets there. So has had at least 6 targets in all but one game this season. I think his role is solidified in this offense, right? And I think that when you're looking at him, you're viewing a wide receiver 3/flex play, on a week-to-week basis. I think there is going to be some down weeks. We saw week 1. There is volatility when it comes to Mooney. It's been like that throughout his career. He's been relatively safe thus far. But again, there are a lot of weapons in this offense. They obviously have Bijan. There's just so many. Drake London, Cal Pitts, like so many weapons, right? So I'm okay with him. I would go out there and get him. I took some shots on him in best ball because I did think that his floor was going to be volatile. I have him in the season long. I haven't started him yet. I luckily have good receivers there, but just someone that just understand that there are going to be some down weeks. I know he's been pretty productive, but I do expect that there are going to be some down weeks. But given his role, 24% target share, 97% snap share, I think it's very difficult not to have him on your roster in most leagues at this time, whether you're starting him or not.
One final question before we look at some of the comments in the chat room. The tight end position, staying in your home state of Florida, you're just talking about a 25% target share. Well, the last 3 weeks, this tight end's had a 26, 27, and 22% target share. Cade Otton has averaged 10 PPR points and 7 targets a week the last 3 games. Not outstanding, not to the moon, but in context of the tight end position, strong production. And in context of the position, extreme levels of consistency, right? So, I mean, it's not likely this is the same thing we we're just talking about. There's no ceiling with Cade Otton, but the floor seems to be pretty stable, and there's bye weeks, there's injuries. Like, is Cade Otton a streaming option for you in a tight end spot, or is he actually somebody we can roll with?
Look, 16% target share on the season, averaging 5 targets per game. He's played in 94% of the offensive snaps over the last 3 games, at least 7.4 PPR points in every game. He's gone over 40 receiving yards, at least 3 receptions. I mean, you mentioned it. We've got zeros for Mark Andrews this year, guys. Like, if you can get 7 to 8 fantasy points on a week-to-week basis, I would take that right now, given the state of the position. So I agree 100% with you. Are you going to feel comfortable starting on it every week? Probably not. But do you feel comfortable starting any tight end this season? Like, outside of Brock Bowers, I don't see many people giving you that safe floor on a week-to-week basis. So, if you're in need of the position, I think he's an ad, and I think he's someone you could rely on. You're gonna get him at a much cheaper price than you had to pay for Tyler Kraft last week, right? So, like, I think you're gonna get a pretty decent floor. Not a safe, nothing safe at the tight end position, but it is a decent floor, Ray.
Armando Marsala, fantasyguru.com, joins us every Tuesday at about 12:30 Eastern time, breaking down the waiver wire with him today. Let's look at some of the comments we've got from the folks. Sean C. says he might take advantage of the offer because looking like my seasonal teams are dying. Sorry that your seasonal teams are dying. You can still turn things around. Don't give up on the seasonal. But yes, if you're interested in getting involved with us over at fantasyguru.com, click the subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. Get the DFS football, and you get wagering football for free. Get wagering football, you get the DFS football for free. It's a flash sale. We've been doing it for about a week now. It's still available, 2 for 1. So check that out. Get DFS and wagering, Armando, for half price.
I could agree more. I mean, Tyler and Jeff both put out some great props last night. I actually did I usually don't do much. I did a little four bet parlay there. It's single game 4-bet parlay. JuJu Smith-Schuster went over the reception prop, the receiving yard prop. Bolton went over his tackles and assists. And there was one more. And the Travis Kelce over the yards. All of that was posted in Discord yesterday, so I saw a lot of people had a good Monday night. So definitely go take advantage of that. It'll pay itself off within a couple of weeks, if that.
Hopefully. And I think Jeff said yesterday he was 9 for 14 this week. I think going in, was it 9 and 4 going into last night, I think was what he was this week, which is pretty damn good winning percentage. And as you noted, a lot of success last night. Michael says the following: Should I drop Jamal Williams for JuJu Smith-Schuster? And then he lists all his running backs. He lists his wide receivers. I mean, looking at the wide receivers, DK Metcalf, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Mike Evans, Terry McLaurin, Tommy Callahan, and Khalil Shakir. Adding JuJu Smith-Schuster, are you playing him? And I see this happening a lot with people. People have extreme levels of depth at one position or another. And while the move Williams to JuJu makes all the sense in the world to me, because I still think Miller ends up being the backup to Kamara, does this fit the team? Because he has Kamara. So do we keep Williams on the chance that Kamara gets hurt, or do we add JuJu, who, if I guess nothing else, you could try to trade because that's a damn good receiving core, and JuJu is not going to play.
I like the idea of adding JuJu for kind of what, the thought process that you had there. Like maybe look for a trade. Maybe you can upgrade at another position. We talked about Etienne and whatnot, and we think that he's going to be the featured back there. But right now it's still, a little bit rocky. So maybe you add JuJu, you pair him up with another player here on this roster, and you can upgrade that RB2 position or just upgrade any position really. So I think when you look at JuJu, he's a better asset than Williams at this time. So I prefer the better asset on my roster.
Slim Shady says the following: how are you viewing Swift after the last 2 weeks? Hold or sell high? We start 2 running backs. My other running back is Saquon Barkley, along with Charbonnet, Bigsby, Sermon, and Garendo. This again, what we were just talking about. It's interesting. It's another question. Is Swift a sell high candidate? I'm going to say yes. Can you sell Swift with this backfield? You can't. Bigsby is a support piece. Sermon's a support piece. Garendo's a support piece. Charbonnet's a support piece. You've got to start Swift. I mean, you don't got to, but you got to, right? So unless you're selling Swift for another running back that you can start on a weekly basis, and you could look into that, it's very difficult to trade him.
Yeah, I agree. Like my initial instinct here is look for the Jonathan Taylor owner, pair Swift and Sermon for a running back, maybe their second RB. I don't know who they would have, but see if it's even possible. That would be the only thing. But I agree with you. If you can't pull off a trade where you're getting a RB2 in return, like someone to pair with Barkley, it's not a trade I would be willing to make because you're just going to leave yourself a big hole at the RB2 position. So, but I agree 100%. I think Swift is a really great sell high candidate right now.
David P. says the following. He's looking at the quarterbacks and some names that we've mentioned earlier. So the rest of the way, rank Kirk Cousins, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, and Anthony Richardson. So 4 guys here. I think you can make arguments for all of them. You can look at some negatives for all of them too. But if you had to rank these 4 guys, Cousins, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson, go Armando.
So I am super against rest of the season questions because things change so quickly in the NFL, right? Like if Trevor Lawrence loses Kirk Cousins or Brian Thomas, his value is going to drop significantly. If Cousins loses Drake London or Kyle Pitts, his value drops significantly. Right now, Anthony Richardson is dinged up, and then Caleb Williams has gotten better each and every week. But again, if he loses any of his key pieces, DJ Moore, an offensive lineman, anything like that, it changes. So right now, the way I would do it is I like Cousins going into this week, and I would prioritize Cousins going into this week. I view him very on par with the rest of this group, and for me, I'm just going to go with the guy I have ranked higher this week. So it would be Cousins. But if you just want right now where I kind of stand on these guys, Cousins, Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams, and then Anthony Richardson simply because he's hurt is why I have him at the end right now.
Angela has a question here. Guess I should hold on to Braylon Allen until we see the new scheme with the New York Jets. Number 1, we're not dropping Braylon Allen. Number 1. Number 2, just because the head coach is gone doesn't mean anything's changing on offense. They're not getting rid of their offensive coordinator. They're not getting rid of their quarterback. Their head coach was a defensive coach anyway in Robert Saleh. I don't think the offense is going to change at all with the new head coach. And this just happened an hour ago, so it's all new, Armando, but do you see things changing with Braylon Allen in the offense at this point?
No, I'm not dropping Braylon Allen whatsoever because number 1, even if his role is not what it was, a couple of weeks ago or whatnot, he's still an elite handcuff, right? He's still someone that if Breece Hall were to miss any time whatsoever, guess what's going to happen? You're going to go out there and have to bid at least 60-70% of your fab budget. So players like that, in my opinion, should always be on rosters, whether they're, producing right now or not. It's just a matter of the rest of your roster and the roster context. That's why we always say more information, the better we have. But no, I'm not dropping Braylon Allen whatsoever here.
Rubby17 says, bid on Tolbert and drop Judy. Judy's in an offense that throws it for 175 yards a week. Tolbert's in an offense that throws it for 275 a week. I'm going to make the move. Judy dropped a touchdown pass right in his hands in the end zone last week. I think you take the shot and go with Tolbert.
I watched it. I mean, look, he had Washington, and he could not get it done. Listen, if you can't get it done against Washington, I don't think you're going to be getting it done this season many times. So I think you're just, you're going to – the week that Judy goes off, he's probably going to be on your bench anyways. So I prefer taking that Tolbert where I feel more comfortable plugging in and playing given his role and expected role and the offense. So, yeah, I would make this move.
KJ Frederick says, rest of the season, your favorite question. And I'm asking, though, because these are two guys that we've talked about today. So we can almost just assume they're on the waiver wire. JuJu Smith-Schuster, Jalen, Tolbert. If you had to choose one of the two guys, Tolbert or JuJu, who would you take?
I'm going to go JuJu because I view his value as more long-term than Tolbert because we don't know. Brandon Cooks, he's going to miss at least the next 4 games. That's the last report, unless there's been anything that's suggesting that he's going to miss the rest of the season. But it's a 4-week window for him. Whereas JuJu, I mean, we expect him to be that underneath guy for the rest of the season for the Chiefs.
Sean H. asked the following question, Armando, again, the waiver wire looking with Mahomes on the bye this week. Who are we looking to pick up as a replacement? Cousins, who we've talked about a lot. Daniel Jones, who we haven't talked about, but has performed much better the last couple of weeks. Trevor Lawrence or Andy Dalton. So, again, a group of players that, one of them runs, the other 3 don't. The one that runs, is Malik Neighbors going to play? We don't know. Talk to us about what you would do for replacement in week number 6 for Patrick Mahomes here.
I would pick up Cousins here, and I don't know if this is a waiver wire priority or if it's fab, but I would go with Cousins. And if you're not a priority and you see someone else that needs a quarterback, Daniel Jones would be my second one here. But we go back to the matchup against Carolina for Cousins that I like a lot here this week.
And then finally, Sean also says, Armando, stay safe. Chris Rose as well. Yes. You battening down the hatches, are you kind of in the path of the storm, Armando? Too early to tell? What's it going like there for you in Florida?
The current path is supposed to be about 300 miles north of me, but I had a conversation with my brother-in-law this morning. I'm still very uneasy because I haven't seen it turn north enough. So it's still it's parallel right now to where I'm at. But it's traveling north. It looks like it's going to hit that, where Chris Rose in that area, more where he's at than where I'm at. But I am under tropical storm warning at this time. And there is supposed to be, surge all across the West Coast, water surge all across the West Coast. So Mike Sillo's also in that area as well. So, we've been in touch. So he's bunkering up there as well.
So happy thoughts to all of our listeners and, of course, our staff, too, hopefully, including Armando, as he mentioned there. Hopefully everyone's okay. In California, we've got earthquakes, so we never know.
Yeah.
Like everything's fine, and then all of a sudden, boom, it hits. So I don't know if it's better to have that or to have the hurricane coming. And I guess it's probably worse to have the hurricane coming and be biting your fingernails going, is it going to go north or not? Like with me, I'm just drinking a beer in the driveway, and then the earthquake hits, right? Would you be freaked out to be in earthquakes? Because, again, I don't know if you've ever lived in this area that really has earthquakes.
Never been in an area that has earthquakes, so I'm pretty sure I would be terrified the minute everything starts shaking around me. I'm like, what is going on? This is the only thing. The anticipation is the thing. But I did get some sandbags and I did get some water and canned goods and stuff just in case. And then my cars are filled up with gas and stuff. I always take care of those precautions, especially this one. This storm has made me very uneasy for whatever reason.
Okay, well, we'll keep a good thought for you, for everyone in Florida. Obviously, be safe, as Armando said. Take precautions. Don't stay home if they tell you to leave. Don't be an idiot. Listen to because I know a lot of people try to ride out the storm. If they tell you to get the hell out of there, be safe, take care of the family, all that kind of stuff. So, best of luck to everyone there, and of course to you, Armando. And thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. You come in every Tuesday here, provided your power and everything works the rest of the week. Let's fingers crossed. Give everyone the rundown as you do every week of what they can expect from you the rest of the week.
Yeah, so we'll have the snap and usage breakdown come out Wednesday. Then we have staff picks, red zone review, the defense versus position charts, and the Mind of Marcel podcast comes out Thursday. The DFS breakdown will go live on Friday. And then every Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, Chris Rose and myself, we do the DFS slate breakdown. We go game by game, breaking every single game of the week down. And then, of course, you can catch us on Discord every Thursday night for an hour before lock, and then every Sunday morning from 11:30 a.m. all the way up to 1 p.m. Eastern. And tonight, Roster Coach live stream, Russell Clay, myself, and Tyler Beaker will be talking some football, answering waiver wire questions and things like that as well.
All right, there it is. So Armando's everywhere over at fantasyguru.com. Click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. You can find this show, Fantasy Sports Daily. You can find his show, Mind of Marcel, as well as the other shows that we have available on the Elite Plus network. Thanks for your time today, Armando. We'll keep our fingers crossed that we're able to see you in a week and that everything goes well with the storm and that everything goes well with your football teams this week. So take care.
Yes, sir. You too. Thank you for having me on. Good luck to everyone this week.
He is Armando Mersol. I am Ray Flowers. You've been watching Fantasy Sports Daily. We'll be back tomorrow at 12 o'clock Eastern Time with Justin Fensterman. I'll be back Thursday and Friday. For Armando, I'm Ray. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com. Be safe, everybody.